to the latest in our Twitter Academy webinar series, How to Build Your Presence on Twitter. I hope you've got your cups of tea ready and your bowls of popcorn there. There's been a lot of great comments already coming in on the Twitter Academy hashtag about this webinar, so I hope you're following us live on Twitter during the session as well. We have a ton of people signed up for today's session, and we are thrilled to have you here. We hope this will be a really useful session for you all. As I mentioned, we're live on Twitter during this session, so please post any questions or comments that you have on Twitter using the hashtag Twitter Academy. We'll answer as many as we can of your questions at the end of the session. And as always, this session is being recorded, so don't worry about taking notes. We will email you a link to the recording afterwards. A quick introduction. This is me. My name is Brian Lavery. I manage Twitter's partnerships that help us reach smaller businesses across Europe. I'm based in our European headquarters in Dublin. And here is our agenda for today. We have 3 topics to cover. First, a reminder, and then 2 instructional sections. The instructional sections sound simple, but these topics are fundamental to your business being successful on Twitter. Laying the groundwork. Here we'll cover how to polish your business's identity on Twitter and how to really activate it. And second, planning for the moment. This is all about making Twitter work for you by understanding your audiences and figuring out what they want before they do. As we go through this, we'll discuss a lot of examples from small businesses that are active on Twitter. Some of those businesses I know are with us on the webinar here today, so a very special welcome to all of them. First, though, we'll take a second to remember the upside. This is just asking ourselves, why is your business on Twitter in the first place, and what benefits do you expect to see from your Twitter presence and your Twitter activity? Last year, we wanted to check what impact small and medium-sized businesses were seeing from building their presence on Twitter, and in particular from gaining followers. The results were pretty compelling. This is a highlight of some of the results from this survey. We did a study of Twitter users, an independent study, across the United States and the United Kingdom, and we found that for small businesses, gaining followers through Twitter activity can have a real impact on their business performance. First, followers feel much more connected with small businesses that they follow. That's the 85% on the left. And they're more likely to act on recommendations. They're a very active community who are trying to support the businesses that they follow. That's the 86% in the middle. And finally, perhaps most importantly, they're nearly 3/4 more likely to buy from small businesses that they follow. 72% of followers are more likely to buy from the businesses that they follow on Twitter. So followers can become an active community that supports your business and helps to make it successful. This is a virtuous cycle, and it's worth keeping this in mind as we consider the next few topics. Now on to laying the groundwork. We'll cover some hygiene factors here first in terms of setting up your business on Twitter. Plenty of business accounts neglect their Twitter profile page. And don't forget to pay some attention here. A little effort can go a long way. Many Twitter users will check your profile page first when deciding whether to follow you or whether to click through to your website. First, make sure that you've added a header image as well as your profile photo. For the header image, we recommend something dynamic but not too distracting, which also captures the spirit of your brand. This example from Packed Coffee, which is a mail-order coffee business in the United Kingdom, shows someone using their product, but also shows the expertise and care associated with their brand, since the woman in the photo is pouring boiling water over apparently 3 different types of coffee, serving up 3 different gourmet blends at once. For the profile photo itself, your company logo is probably best. Don't use a headshot of yourself unless you're a sole trader who completely represents your business as an individual. Your bio and your company URL are important as well, since these can help your page to show up in search engine results. For the same reason, it's good to link back to your Twitter profile page from other sites. Also remember that the URL that you put here can be a specific landing page for Twitter users, if that's appropriate for your purposes. Over on the bottom left, we have the photo gallery. This highlights the 6 most recent pictures that you've posted. It's good to see that Packed Coffee and I share both a love of Mr. T. Make sure that these are photos that you want there. If you want Mr. T to disappear from your little gallery of 6 pictures, you'll need to tweet or retweet more content with pictures until Mr. T is bumped out. Our next piece of advice is especially relevant for small and medium-sized businesses. And this is about working with your own staff to activate your Twitter presence. I personally would never encourage anyone to use the HR cliche about our greatest asset is our people, but when it comes to Twitter, your people can certainly help. First, encourage your staff to get onto Twitter in the first place, and ask them then to follow your company account. They can retweet and reply to your posts. And depending on what's right for your company, you could also have them managing your company Twitter handle directly themselves. When your employees tweet good content that's relevant to your business, it's also a good idea to retweet that from the company handle. All of this helps to build a community with a bit of buzz around your Twitter account. Here are 2 examples of this, of small businesses using their staff to create content. Foodipedia is a UK website dedicated to news about food, restaurants, and cuisine in the UK. They posted a picture of their intern, Alex, wearing a sombrero in the office, perhaps when he was writing about Mexican food. And they mentioned the popular London burrito chain, Pancho 8, in this tweet. So Pancho 8 then retweeted that to their own followers as well. In the other example here at the bottom, Packed Coffee's community manager, Pete Sivak, posted an invitation to a Twitter event from his personal account, which Packed Coffee then retweeted. And Pete, if you're with us today, very welcome to the webinar. The point here is that your company most likely already has a team of people who can help you develop content and can extend your Twitter reach into their own networks. As I mentioned, this is a great way to build buzz about your company and also pride internally. Our next point, our next tip, is to take Twitter offline. By sharing your @handle, which is your Twitter username, you're encouraging everyone to engage with you on Twitter. You can print your @handle on any sort of physical object that you work with, like vehicles, equipment, clothing, or even musical instruments and other specific niche equipment for you. The act of engaging with customers on Twitter says something about your business. It says that you are accessible, you're responsive, and you're forward-thinking. And you're putting the effort in to engage with your customers on Twitter, so make sure that people know about it. You can be creative with this. Here we see 2 of the companies that we just mentioned a moment ago, Packed and Pancho 8, using Twitter content on their printed materials. On the left, Pancho 8 has taken a tweet from one of its satisfied customers and printed it on a price label in one of its shops. Here what this says is, I think Craig Holden is the name of the Twitter user who says that Pancho 8's chorizo topping is mind-blowingly good. So this is an independent verification of the quality of the product printed on a label in the shop. Packed Coffee puts its @handle on its packaging labels and invites its customers to submit feedback on Twitter to them when they receive an order. Of course, if you have something like airplanes, you can put your @handle on an airplane as well. It blew us away last summer when Aer Lingus tweeted this picture, entirely unprompted, of its Twitter handle on the side of one of its Airbus 320s, so I personally couldn't resist including it here today. One final point in this section about laying the groundwork. We're thinking a lot at the moment about how businesses integrate Twitter with their other marketing activity. One easy way to do this is by putting follow and tweet buttons onto your website. These are simple to install, and the instructions are online on our developers blog at dev.twitter.com. These buttons allow people who visit your website to follow you on Twitter or to post a tweet mentioning your @handle without leaving your site. We know that companies using these buttons see increased engagement from their audiences on Twitter and 7 times more traffic back to their websites from Twitter simply because people are tweeting about them more often. Your website is really just the tip of the iceberg, though. There's an emerging science behind content marketing, And Twitter can serve as the critical glue that holds your content marketing strategy together. For example, if you were to launch a new ad campaign, whether it's online or in print or on broadcast media, you can use Twitter to leverage the creative material in it. You can tweet additional content that supports the advertising message, or you could simply tweet out images and video clips from the ads to reinforce them. Another example, if your company issues publicity materials, think of each press release or photo shoot as raw material, that's just the starting point, that you can divide up and publish again in a series of tweets. Also, don't be afraid to retweet your best material a few times because your followers may not have caught it all the first time around. That was the end of our first section. I hope you found it useful so far. And now we're moving on to part 2, plan for the moment. As I mentioned at the start, this section is all about making Twitter work for you by understanding your audiences and trying to figure out what they're talking about, what they want to hear before they know themselves. This is a relevant strategy, particularly at the moment, because Twitter is now carrying 1 billion tweets every 2 days. This means hundreds of millions of conversations that your company can join to reach your customers or your target audiences, no matter who they are or where they are or what they're talking about. It is all on Twitter. In addition, about 80% of our users access Twitter from a mobile phone or a tablet, which means that they're using it all the time throughout the day. If your customers are following you on Twitter, you are right there with them, probably in their pocket. And there are plenty of moments when you can engage with them. We're going to cover 3 types of moments on Twitter that you can plan for and that you can join in. We're going to start with the big moments, the ones that grab international headlines. One of these events took place last summer when the royal baby, Prince George, was born in the UK to Kate Middleton and Prince William. It was a momentous event in the UK and made headlines, of course, around the world. The royal family announced the birth on Twitter from the Clarence House handle, and Twitter responded in kind with more than 15,000 retweets of the official announcement and many thousands more comments and discussions around it. Many of them used the royal baby hashtag, and amid all of the celebrations and off-the-cuff comments, there were plenty of jokes, like this one from Tara Weingarten, joking that Kate and Will should hold up their baby like the lion cub in the Disney movie The Lion King. However, we also saw plenty of businesses joining in this conversation. It wasn't just about the news. Here we see Starbucks joining in, putting 2 regular coffee cups and 1 baby little espresso cup to symbolize the newest royal family unit, linking their brand to that event in a clever way. Similarly, Coca-Cola did the same, with an image showing its current marketing trend of named bottles, with these bottles personalized for Will and Kate, and they also use the hashtag, the royal baby hashtag, to ensure that Twitter users following conversations about the birth were more likely to see it. So these are 2 impressive examples by big multinational global brands, and they very likely took some significant marketing resources to create. But the point is that these were not done on the spot. Starbucks and Coke planned ahead and had these tweets and these images ready to go so that they could join in the conversation at the right time when Prince George was born. And we saw smaller businesses doing this too, smaller organizations of all sorts. This approach isn't restricted to big brands. Here, the UK Guide Dogs charity joined the conversation with a cute puppy picture. And the puppy happened to be named George, which of course turned out to be a smart choice since the prince's name wasn't revealed until a few months later. We also see the Visit London tourism service joining in this case a few months later for the royal baby christening, and pushing a particular product in this case, London-themed baby grows for little princes and princesses. So it's not hard to think of ways in which businesses of all sorts can join in this conversation. It could be to push a particular product or service, or it could simply be to keep an ongoing dialogue with your Twitter followers and to stay relevant to them and to join conversations about the things that they care about. Next, we're going to look at connected moments. By connected moments, we mean any event or occasion that matters to a specific interested group of people. This doesn't have to be globally significant, although it could be. These events and these moments are often about pop culture, like a TV milestone, the end of a big television series like Breaking Bad last year, a concert, or maybe a reunion of a pop band, or a movie release. And sports matches are also a huge opportunity here. This year we have coming up the Olympics and the World Cup and the U.S. Super Bowl this weekend. And don't forget, local events are connected opportunities too. In particular, if your business operates in a certain region or serves a particular town or area, don't forget to join in on local events also. There are also plenty of industry-specific events, like conferences and trade shows. One example here comes from earlier this month, when the annual Consumer Electronics Show took place in Las Vegas. CES has been running for nearly 40 years, and it attracts nearly 150,000 people each year to Las Vegas. All of the big international technology hardware manufacturers use it to debut their new gear and to show off innovative product developments. But it's not just about the likes of Samsung and Apple. Plenty of smaller businesses are there too and are joining in the conversation about it. Here we see them using Twitter to highlight their presence at the event and to join in their conversations about it. We have iGrow Laser UK, Revolve, and Turtle Beach all celebrating the awards and the praise that their products picked up at CES. And one of my favorites from the CES conversations a couple of weeks ago was actually from Realtor magazine. This is a magazine for estate agents, actually based in the United States, but nowhere near Las Vegas, which talks about how estate agents, in this tweet, can use the new camera lenses that attach to a smartphone. So I'm not sure if people from Realtor magazine were present at CES in Las Vegas, but with this type of content on Twitter, they didn't have to actually be there. They're joining in the conversation in a relevant way and thinking about the content and presenting it in a way that's relevant to their followers. Finally, we'll cover everyday moments. We know that many people on Twitter tweet about what they're doing all the time. They get up out of bed, they feed the cat, eat their breakfast, go to work, etc. Conversations on Twitter are now much more substantial, but our analytics shows that those sort of daily conversations still do happen a lot and are completely predictable. And this creates more opportunities to engage with your audiences and more opportunities that you can plan for. For example, we see daily spikes in mentions of terms around running or even the word run on Twitter, particularly in the morning when people who like to run hit the road for a jog or a run before they go to work. You can also see from the trend over the course of a week that people tend to get a bit more exercise on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays than they do on Thursdays and Fridays. And in particular, they tend to tweet about running early on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday mornings. Nike joined this conversation by posting an inspirational tweet at 6:30 a.m., 6:37 to be precise, right when its followers and its target audiences on Twitter were likely to be lacing up their shoes. So this is them joining in a conversation, an everyday conversation, with an inspirational piece of content that really matters to their followers and reinforces their brand. It doesn't have to be just every day. We also see a lot of seasonal trends in conversations, particularly here, again, about the weather. There are spikes in mentions when certain weather conditions occur. You can see here the high spikes between October and November, and in January last year when there were likely particularly storms in the UK where this data is from, and also the fact that just in general, talk about the bad weather kind of peaks in December, January, February, and then tails off in the spring. No real surprises there. But when it is raining, that's an opportunity for businesses to join in a conversation about the rain. Here we see Bovey Castle, a luxury hotel in Devon, turning negative conversations about the rain into a positive opportunity for people to get warm indoors for an afternoon tea by the fire in their hotel. Over here in Dublin, we see Primark using the Irish rain, which we all know and love, I suppose, as an opportunity to remind people in Ireland that Penneys is a great place to pick up an umbrella for €5 or €6 with particularly cute prints. So all of this can seem a bit daunting, so we have a couple of suggestions for how to choose your timing in advance. We haven't spent any time on this session today talking about Twitter ads. That's outside the scope of this webinar series, but it is worth knowing that our targeting options with our promoted tweets products allow you to serve your tweets to particular users just when they engage with certain keywords. So this actually does help with the scheduling question. In the Nike example, if Nike had promoted that tweet, they could set it to be shown to Twitter users just when they mention the word running or run. But you can make this easy for yourselves with a couple of tools as well. The first way is to use a calendar. And I apologize for the text on this slide, which is not quite as clear, but I'll explain it through, and I think the concepts are pretty straightforward. If you use a calendar, look ahead to the year, pick holidays, seasonal events that might matter to your customers, product launches that you may have, trade shows that you may be attending, product launches that your competitors may have, or big industry events, the launch of the next Apple iPhone or who knows what's coming up. And think of all the opportunities that you might have to reach out to your customers and to your audiences on Twitter. Remember the importance of followers that we thought about at the beginning and how they feel connected to small business brands that they follow. At the bottom of the screen here, you see an example of a business writing tweets in advance in a spreadsheet. They have a date set for each one, the tweet copy, and then a column that actually counts the characters in the tweet that they've typed so far, subtracts that from 140 to tell them if they have any characters remaining or if they've gone too long, and then also another column for links or to indicate whether they've added a picture to their tweet. This is a great way to plan ahead with a simple spreadsheet that will let you sit down one day of the week, write a bunch of tweets, and make your life easier for the rest of the week. You can also use an application like Tweetdeck to schedule your tweets in advance. Tweetdeck is a free product from Twitter. It's available at tweetdeck.com. This screenshot shows Tweetdeck running on my actual computer. To the left of the screen here, underneath where it says New Tweet, you can see the calendar that's popped up and the fields when I can enter a specific time. So I can choose a time and date when I want a certain tweet to run in the future. So this allows you to schedule a number of tweets in advance. So that's it in terms of our main topics for today. So I'm just going to summarize some of the key points that we've covered in 140 characters or less. First, design every element of your Twitter profile to best reflect your business. Your Twitter profile should tell your story. Second, take Twitter offline to extend the conversation around your business. Third, get your people involved. Get them tweeting to show your personality and to be more human and build your brand. And fourth, life is a series of now moments. These moments are lived out and discussed on Twitter. So plan ahead to reach your customers with the right message at the right time. So that's all of our content for today. We've covered all of that in about 25 minutes, so we have about 5 minutes left for questions. We do have a very large audience with us here today, so I apologize in advance that we won't be able to cover every question. For many questions that you may have, though, please remember that we have a ton of resources available at business.twitter.com. And if you follow our dedicated handle for small and medium-sized business in the UK and Ireland, that's on the screen here now, at @TwitterUKI_SME, we tweet a lot of tips and tricks out from that handle, which could help you and may help to address some of your questions. Okay, a couple of questions here. First, from @Waitos. Waitos was about to go into a meeting. Will Twitter Academy be available afterwards? So as I mentioned at the start, in case you joined us late, we will send around a link to a recording of the webinar later today. From @Priscilla's Attic, what's your top tip for new businesses? So, good question. I would really try to think inside the head of your potential audience. Think about what they're looking for, what topics they're engaged in, and how you can join in those conversations. This is related to the overall strategy of planning for the moment. And this is similar to the approach that you might take to designing your own products and services. Think about what your customers want and how you can stay relevant to them. Next, from @John M. Hayes. We seem to attract more U.S. followers looking at our tweets. How can we build our UK followers? That's a good question. One particular answer here is that you can use Twitter ads to target users in specific locations, and you can limit your follower bases that you're targeting or the audiences that you're targeting to the UK and also within certain geographic regions or within certain cities within the UK, so that would help. And perhaps also maybe just to continue joining in conversations that are very UK specific. So now from Tony Cullinan, how do you start from a very low base of followers? Another good question. How do you build a follower base? So retweeting good content is a great way to start, and you can also ask people to follow you. Don't forget that every time you engage with a customer, let them know that you're on Twitter, ask them to follow you, and then as you put up your own good content, ask your followers to retweet it, and the network should build organically that way. Again, you can use our Promoted Accounts product with Twitter ads to target followers for your account also. Now, from @Actor Dasher, is it better to take a personal or a more corporate approach to tweets for a small business? So this really depends on your objectives, but my personal approach on Twitter is to try to be personal. And I think that really listening here and finding out the tone that your audience expects and what really resonates with them should guide you in the type of tone that you approach, that you take. You know, if you are targeting a particular market, if you're an accounting firm and you're targeting professionals and you're tweeting about seasonal events like filing tax returns, you might take a different approach if you were managing events or nightclubs targeting a student market, for example. Quite obviously. So next. At Laminin Solution, I think, how do you find hashtags that are relevant to your industry for connected moments? There are a number of online resources out there. There's a website called sociable.co.uk that has a good link on hashtag tools that I might recommend. But also some searches, even within Twitter, just using the Twitter search tool should help you call up some industry topics. You could also look for industry leaders within your industry, maybe pick your competitors or your suppliers, other people who are leading in your industry, and figure out what they're talking about and what hashtags they're using. Also look for industry events. If there are trade shows or conferences that you might attend or think of attending, check out their websites and tweets about them and see what hashtags they're using. Now, let's see. At Paul's Peace, P-O-L-S-P-I-E, at Twitter Academy, I'm a one-woman band doing holiday lets. How can I have conversations? So that's a good question. How do you actually manage these resources from a resource perspective, and how do you manage kind of a live customer service channel on Twitter? Well, I hope that you're using our mobile app and that you're able to get back to people on the fly if you can, using your phone. But also, maybe setting aside a certain amount of time and using applications like Tweetdeck to schedule some tweets to help kind of guide the conversations can help to get you started. So that's all that we have time for today. Thank you all very, very much for joining us. I hope that you have enjoyed today's session. And please do follow us on Twitter at @TwitterUKI_SME for details of our next Twitter Academy session, which will be coming up very soon. Thanks very much.